Hebrew prophets spoke of a time known as the last days, a time when a man known as the Antichrist will rule planet Earth, a time of great deception and great persecution. Those days are now. My name is Bob Mitchell, and this is Prophecy Update. Hi friends, I've been doing some thinking of late over Daniel's 70th week. Thought I'd just share a few things with you. The 70th week of Daniel, chapter 9, is a subject that has been expounded by men greater than I shall ever hope to be. So this is not a put down on their teaching. It's something I have studied, and what comes next is just my opinion. There are different schools of thought regarding the 70 weeks prophecy. One of them being the historical view, and that is that the entire 70 weeks of years were fulfilled in 70 AD with the sacking of the Jerusalem temple and the exile of the Jewish people to the four corners of the world. Others believe Jesus and the disciples fulfilled that final week of years in that Jesus' ministry was for 3.5 years, and the following 3.5 years, making a total of 7, were fulfilled by the disciples preaching to the Jewish people before Paul took the gospel to the Gentiles. As I see it, the problem with both these views is the prophecy is clear that the outcome of these 70 weeks will be to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness. So we have to ask, did the death and resurrection of Jesus and the subsequent preaching of the disciples finish transgression, make an end of sins, make reconciliation for iniquity? Did it bring in everlasting righteousness? At a push, we can only really say that Jesus made reconciliation for sins when he died on the cross. But as yet, there are still transgressions. People still sin, and certainly everlasting righteousness has not yet appeared. So in my view, which is known as the futurist viewpoint, we are still looking for the fulfillment of that final, the 70th week of years, which will only be accomplished on Jesus' second coming and his destruction of the Antichrist's empire, followed by the setting up of his millennial kingdom in Jerusalem. The 70 weeks prophecy tells us that from the date a certain decree would be made to go and rebuild Jerusalem to the coming of the Messiah would be 69 of those weeks, or more plainly, 483 years, leaving just 7 years to complete the prophecy. History tells us that very decree was given by King Artaxerxes in around 444 or 445 BC, that is around 200 years after the actual prophecy was made. And we can trace the fulfillment of those prophetic years to the very day Jesus Christ rode into Jerusalem. Scholars believe that from that date the prophecy stopped, and we are now left with just 7 of those years to be fulfilled when the Antichrist appears and makes his agreement between Israel and her enemies. That will be the start of the final 7 years. So now here is the kicker. These prophetic years are not our usual solar years of 365 days per year. They are lunar years. In the time of the ancients, they measured these years at 360 days per year. Now, if those first set of years, culminating in Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, were years of 360 days per year, which can be proved beyond doubt to be the case, then the final 7 years surely have to also be years of 360 days per year. That otherwise the whole 70 weeks is not consistent. What I'm saying, folks, is this. The 70 weeks prophecy was given by God himself, who decrees how long the prophecy will run. So it isn't Antichrist who determines how long this final 7-year period will be. God does. And according to the prophecy, it will run for 7 years at 360 days per year. So the 7 years can't be declared by the Antichrist when he comes, because they are not our solar years at all. They are lunar years of 360 days per year. So when you watch or read Left Behind or some other end-time movie and the Antichrist stands and says something like, "This marks the start of our 7 years of peace," you can be sure it isn't true. God declares how long the period will be, not man. And according to the 70 weeks prophecy, it will be 7 years at 360 days per year. There is more to this, of course, as other days are mentioned later in Daniel. But basically, this is the rundown of the 70 weeks prophecy. So we are looking for some kind of covenant between Israel and others. Now my fear is that many believers will be fooled by these coming 7 lunar years, because if, or rather when, the covenant is signed, they will look at what their prophecy teachers have told them, and not hearing or seeing a declaration of a 7-year treaty, they will immediately refuse to believe this is the start of the final week of Daniel's 70 weeks that culminate in Jesus Christ's return. How can it be, they'll say? My favourite Bible teacher said a 7-year peace deal will be hammered out and there is no mention of 7 years here. Oh, it must be a type. It must be a foreshadowing of what is to come. So this wonderful man who has signed the deal is only perhaps a well-meaning shadow, a type of the Antichrist, but he's not actually the Antichrist. Because of this, the great deception will begin, and many believers will fall into the trap of thinking the Antichrist is an okay guy. Be forewarned, dear friends, you do not have to believe what I've said. Please take it to the Lord, take it to him yourself, and do your own research.